Hello everyone, Vicentio from HDTV Test here. Sony has dropped an early present for owners of the Bravia XH90, also marketed as the X900H in the USA 4K LED LCD television. Just 2 days after I published a video speculating on the release date for the HDMI 2.1 firmware, maybe sometime in winter, the Japanese brand actually started rolling out the necessary firmware for unlocking 4K at 120 frames per second this morning, forcing me to flip-flop more than the last time I was in Marbella. So let's get into what the firmware adds in terms of the HDMI 2.1 features. But before I dive into that, I would like to give a quick shout out to Richard Sounds Manchester, who was kind enough to set up the Sony XH90, the 55-inch version, in their demo room for me to go in and quickly test various features. I didn't have a lot of time, and I didn't have a Sony XH90 in my test room at the moment, so when I found out that the firmware update was rolling out, I gave a quick call to the store manager, Paul at Richard Sounds Manchester, and he said that, yeah, just come in, we'll set it up for you, all socially distanced, with hand sanitizers and masks and stuff. So there I was, testing various features very quickly of this new firmware update. So if you can look at the user menu here, I am going to show the software version. So the new firmware will be version 6.0348, and it will bring a few new features to the XH90 or X900H televisions. The first one is the unlocking of 4K at 120 Hz, but only on HDMI ports 3 and 4. So if you go into the external input and then the HDMI signal format submenu, then you can see that for HDMI 3 and HDMI 4, there will be a couple of new options. One of the options will be to set the HDMI signal format to enhanced, which will unlock 4K at 120 Hz. And indeed, when we looked at the Moridio 7G signal generator, which I had to bring along to Richard Sounds Manchester for the purpose of this video, we can see that once you select that option, the EDIT will be showing an FRL or fixed rate link of 12 gigs at 4 lane, meaning that the XH90 will feature an SoC with full bandwidth HDMI 2.1 support of 48 gigabits per second. And if you pay attention to the next line as well, Dolby Vision support will be discarded. So I think what is happening is that you have to choose between either supporting 4K at 120 frames per second or Dolby Vision, because there is not enough characters in the EDIT to signal to the source device. So you will have to select manually in the user menu whether you want HDMI 3 or HDMI 4 to support 4K at 120 Hz or support Dolby Vision. And then the TV will change and modify its EDIT accordingly so that your source device will be able to send the correct signal to the TV. Next, what we are going to do is to check HDMI 1 and 2, and indeed, HDMI 1 and 2 are still the box standard HDMI 2.0B ports. They don't have support for 4K at 120 Hz, and I believe. Then, the next thing I'm going to check is to try and test various resolutions. Yes, I even brought along my really heavy PC with the RTX 3090 card to Richard Sounds Manchester, and it nearly broke my back, but that is a sacrifice I have to do to try and create the sort of videos for my audience. And before I actually forget, I thank Richard Sounds Manchester, but genuinely, I think things are not easy in a physical store in the pandemic and stuff. So I think, if you are thinking about buying a new television, please support them and give the guys there a call on 0333 900 0086. And if you need to buy any television, I'm sure they will appreciate your custom. And they've been extremely helpful to me and supportive to this channel, and I would appreciate that you give them your support as well so that I can continue creating this sort of content. Right, where was I? After testing from the Meridio 7G signal generator, what we're going to do is to use my PC with the RTX 3090 card to test various resolutions. And indeed, once I set the HDMI signal format to enhanced 4K at 120 frames per second in the user menu, I could enable UHD resolution 3840 x 2160 at 120 Hz with 10-bit YCbCr 444 chroma, and even 12-bit later on, there was no problem, meaning that the 48 gigabits per second of HDMI bandwidth is indeed working to allow for 12-bit 444 chroma 4K at 120 Hz. And next, what we're going to check is native support for 1440p at 120 Hz, and indeed it seems to be working. It seemed to switch to 1440p 120 Hz without any problem. Oh, I actually didn't have time to test whether all these are in HDR. I suspect they are not in HDR. Also, I had no way from the Sony's user interface to confirm that these are indeed the resolution, but from what's happening on the PC itself, I don't have any doubt that these are the resolutions that have been sent through and been displayed by the Sony XH90 that was in Richard Sounds, Manchester. And then I wanted to show you a couple of other features that have been added by this new firmware update. And the first one would be another HDMI 2.1 feature, namely eARC or Enhanced ARC. I can see that once I go into the sound menu, you can set eARC to auto, which will turn it on. And also another app that has been added by this firmware update of 6.0384 would be the Apple TV app. If you go into the app section on the Android home screen, it is still Android 9 by the way. If you go into the app section, then scroll down, you will see Apple TV app there. So if you are an owner of the Sony XH90 or X900H, I hope you are happy that this firmware update has arrived sooner rather than later to unlock 4K at 120 Hz and also eARC support. However, VRR and ALLM support will come at a later date, and indeed when I ran the Pendulum app from NVIDIA on the Sony XH90, which has been updated to this latest firmware, G-Sync couldn't be enabled. But maybe the firmware update to enable VRR and also ALLM will arrive in winter 2020 as per Sony's promise. But by bringing this firmware update to unlock 4K at 120 Hz and also eARC, the company has gone some way towards fulfilling the promise of making these TVs, namely the Sony XH90 and also the Sony ZH8, ready for PlayStation 5. And this firmware update, which is earlier than expected, is probably one thing that came early and no one was disappointed. I have compiled a playlist of our other videos talking about HDMI 2.1 and next generation consoles, including the Sony PS5, in a playlist here if you want to click there and watch some of our videos. And I'll see you in the next one.